that is when he lunged at me, and I was still recording. So he pushes me, he puts both hands on me, and I push his hand off.
Welcome to the Paul Levette Show. I am your host, Paul Levette. Today we're going to be looking at Hob Garcia. He is a U.S. citizen that was detained by ICE this past Wednesday in Hollywood, California. We're also going to look at the media bias surrounding the detention and possible obstruction charge that Mr. Garcia could possibly face. Along the way, we're going to look at the obvious media bias, Mr. Garcia's plan to sue for civil rights violations, officer safety, assault of a federal agent possibly, and possible obstruction. So this past Wednesday, Hob Garcia, a U.S. citizen, was arrested while filming an ICE enforcement action outside of a Hollywood Home Depot. By Thursday, the mainstream media was in full gear, spinning the story with some pretty salacious headlines. So let me bring up that slide. And as we can see here, NBC Los Angeles, U.S. citizen detained by federal agents in Hollywood recounts his experience. Fox 11, U.S. citizen speaks out after being detained by ICE in Hollywood. Yahoo News, well, that's the same as the prior one. And then ABC 7, Chicago, a U.S. citizen who was arrested during an ICE raid at Los Angeles Hollywood is what they're pointing out here. I believe a more accurate headline would be ICE agents detain individual for interfering with an arrest and striking a federal agent. So that would be more technically correct and accurate for the situation that was going on. So why this headline? For starters, Mr. Garcia was way too close to the detention that was actively happening, and by his own words, he struck the officer that was trying to push him back to create a safe perimeter for the officer and the suspect. The fact that Mr. Garcia was a U.S. citizen is irrelevant, as the default assumption would be that he is a citizen, since after all, we live in the United States. So let me bring up the video for you.
No les abra. Yo, are you serious, bro? Vamos por atrás.
Witnesses, including Garcia, yelling at the officers as they targeted a man in this truck.
That is when he lunged at me, and I was still recording. So he pushes me, he puts both hands on me, and I push his hand off.
In light of Mr. Garcia being too close and striking the officer, what of his civil rights does he think were violated?
What he does know, though, he says, is that he will be taking legal action for the violation of his civil rights.
I mean, heck, he is a PhD student at a very expensive private college, the Claremont Colleges, and he's out on the streets harassing ICE agents who are only trying to do their job. Why is he out in the streets endangering himself for individuals who are in the country illegally instead of being home with his beautiful child? This is really irrational behavior, in my opinion. As I showed you, Mr. Garcia was way too close to the officers making the detention. This was a danger to the officers, who do not know who Mr. Garcia is or what his intentions were. When officers tried to push him back, how did he respond? He struck the officer. That he said with his own words. Finally, I believe that Mr. Garcia is opening himself up to a possible obstruction charge. When he says, in effect, if his arrest enabled an undocumented person to escape and get back home to their family, it is worth it.
However long period that was, if an undocumented person ran away and got to get to his family and got to get to his pregnant wife, then I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but I would love to hear one for and one against the obstruction charge argue their cases. I mean, if one's behavior ties up the officers and allows their target to escape, is that not in effect obstruction? So let's take a look at that one last time.
No les abra. Yo, are you serious, bro? Vamos por atrás.
So this whole thing, this whole immigration issue, all these people out on the streets, endangering themselves, endangering others. This individual, he's a PhD student, and I don't know what that is in, but he could possibly have long-term effects should he end up getting charged by the feds. And he probably should be charged for something based on his actions. But we need to understand we all live by the law. We all need to adhere to the law, and individuals that their first act in this country is breaking the law because they entered the country without the proper paperwork. So the obvious thing is to remove them from the country, and they must follow the due process to come back into the country. And if they fail to self-deport, I do believe the president has said you will never be able to come back. So it is probably wise for those in the country illegally to return to their country of origin and come back to the United States properly. And with that, this is the Paul Levesque Show.